Few mysteries in General Hospital history have ignited fan debate quite like the question now echoing through every corner of Port Charles. What began as a shocking act of violence quickly spiraled into a web of secrets, betrayals, long-buried grudges, and dangerous alliances. The shooting of Drew wasn't just an attempted murder, it was the match that lit a powder keg, exposing fault lines that had been quietly forming for months. Now, the answers are finally coming into focus. And as with all things in Port Charles, the truth is far more complicated and far more devastating than anyone expected. Let's break it all down. The night of the shooting, the suspects, the motives, the red herrings, and the stunning truth behind who pulled the trigger, and why. The night Drew was shot was deceptively quiet. Port Charles was settling into an uneasy calm. Some residents were celebrating small victories, others nursing private losses. Drew himself had just left a tense confrontation, one that would later prove critical to the investigation. Moments later, a gunshot shattered the silence. Drew collapsed, bleeding out as the shooter vanished into the darkness. By the time help arrived, Drew was barely clinging to life. The question wasn't just who did this, but why now? From the beginning, it was clear. This wasn't random. This was personal. To understand the shooting, you have to understand Drew's position in Port Charles at the time. Drew had become a man standing at the crossroads of multiple volatile storylines. He knew secrets powerful people wanted buried. He was a threat to carefully constructed lies. And emotionally, he had pushed more than one person to their breaking point. Drew wasn't just a victim, he was a catalyst. Nina immediately landed at the top of the suspect list, and not without reason. Drew represented everything Nina feared. Exposure, loss of control, and the potential collapse of relationships she had fought desperately to protect. In the days leading up to the shooting, Nina and Drew had a heated confrontation. Voices were raised. Threats, thinly veiled but unmistakable, were exchanged. Witnesses later confirmed Nina was nearby the night of the shooting. Despite circumstantial evidence, cracks began to appear in the case against her. Surveillance footage placed Nina near the scene, but not at the moment of the shooting. And more importantly, Nina is impulsive. Yes, but calculated violence? That didn't quite fit. Nina was hiding something, but not this. When it comes to Carly, fans know one thing. She protects her family at all costs. Drew's actions had indirectly endangered people Carly loves. Worse, he held information that could destroy fragile alliances and reignite old wars. In the aftermath of the shooting, Carly's reaction raised eyebrows. She wasn't shocked. She was guarded. Too guarded. Investigators quickly realized Carly's guilt was emotional, not criminal. She knew Drew was in danger. She didn't stop it. But pulling the trigger? Carly would confront Drew head-on, not from the shadows. Michael is often underestimated, and that's what makes him dangerous. Drew's secrets threatened Michael's carefully planned future. Business interests, family stability, and personal loyalties were all on the line. Michael had the resources. Michael had the access. And Michael had the discipline to plan something like this. For weeks, clues seemed to point directly at Michael. Anonymous tips. Misleading evidence. Even a shell casing linked to a Corinthos warehouse. But the truth? Michael was being set up. Someone wanted him to look guilty. Whenever violence meets strategy, Valentin's name inevitably surfaces. Drew had become an obstacle. A wild card. Someone who knew too much about Cassadine operations and alliances. Valentin thrives on chessboard moves, sacrificing one piece to save the king. The shooting was sloppy. Valentin doesn't miss. He doesn't leave chaos. And he doesn't act without an exit strategy airtight enough to vanish entire governments. This wasn't Cassadine precision. Sonny has been blamed for half the crimes in Port Charles, whether he committed them or not. Drew's knowledge put Sonny at risk. Old grudges resurfaced. Old wounds reopened. Sonny had motive, but not intent. In fact, Sonny had quietly warned Drew to watch his back. And in a rare twist, Sonny's alibi checked out completely. As the investigation dragged on, one truth became impossible to ignore. The shooter wasn't acting out of rage. This wasn't revenge. This was desperation, which led investigators and viewers to someone hiding in plain sight. As Drew hovered between life and death, fragments of memory began to surface. A voice. A silhouette. A familiar presence that didn't feel like an enemy, until it was too late. Drew remembered one thing clearly. The shooter hesitated. That hesitation cracked the case wide open. The person who shot Drew wasn't a villain. They weren't a mob boss.
They weren't acting for power.
They were acting out of fear. Yes, Jordan.
Jordan had been pushed into an impossible corner.
She had uncovered information tied to Drew that threatened to
destroy lives, compromise law enforcement,
and expose a covert operation that powerful forces were desperate to keep buried.
Drew refused to back down.
Jordan begged him to walk away.
He wouldn't.
That night, Jordan confronted Drew one last time, not to kill him, but to scare him into silence. The gun went off during a struggle. One fatal second. One irreversible mistake. Jordan didn't flee in triumph.
She fled in horror.
Within minutes, she realized what she'd done, and what it would cost if the truth came out.
She didn't plan the shooting, but she did plan the cover-up. Here's where the story explodes. Jordan didn't act alone after the fact. Someone erased evidence. Someone rerouted security feeds.
Someone fed false leads to investigators.
That someone?
Anna Devane. Anna believed she was protecting the greater good.
She believed the truth would cause more harm than silence. But secrets in Port Charles never stay buried.
When Drew finally regained consciousness, everything shifted.
He remembered Jordan. He remembered the gun.
And most devastating of all, he remembered the look on her face after the shot.
Not hatred. Fear.